The first stab of pain came before dawn. Jack Peterson lay on his back like a beached sailor, staring at the ceiling where a crack in the plaster had, over 40 years, morphed into something resembling either the outline of Florida or the profile of his late wife. His right knee burned as if someone had injected molten lead into it. He knew the drill. Wiggle the toes first, then slowly, very slowly bend the leg at the knee, hold his breath as the pain crested, and only then roll onto his side. But this morning had other plans. When he tried to turn, his left shoulder, the one grazed by a Vietnamese bullet back in '71, locked up as if the joint had rusted shut. Jack groaned, and the sound, raspy and helpless, scared him more than the pain itself. "God damn it," he whispered into the dark. The phone on his nightstand blinked. His granddaughter, Sarah, had installed some app that glowed blue for good weather and red for snow. Today it pulsed like a warning beacon. Jack fumbled for his glasses, then the TV remote. The screen flickered to life with the morning news. Record-breaking cold expected tonight, the worst in 20 years, chirped an annoyingly cheerful anchor for 5 a.m. Drivers are advised he muted it. The house breathed around him with the quiet sounds of aging. A floorboard creaked, pipes groaned. Wind rattled the shutters he'd never gotten around to fixing last summer. He'd lived here with Mary for 38 years, raised 2 kids, weathered 3 recessions, and survived one president he couldn't stand. Here, he'd taught his daughter to ride a bike and his son to change the oil. Here, Mary had planted roses that now withered without her care. And now this house was slowly killing him. Jack finally managed to sit up, lowering his feet gingerly to the floor. The once plush carpet felt thin and rough under his soles. He reached for the cane he'd bought last month, hiding the purchase from the neighbors. Just for icy patches, he'd told himself. But the cane had already become part of his morning routine. In the kitchen, he flicked on the light and filled the kettle. His hands trembled, just enough to spill water beside the mug. "Get it together, old man," he muttered. The fridge was nearly empty. The milk he bought 2 days ago smelled faintly sour. Jack held his breath as he poured it down the drain. Leftover soup, half a stick of butter, eggs. The freezer held a freezer-burned pizza and a mystery bag that might have once been meat. Gotta hit the store, he thought, eyeing the snow already dusting the walkway Bill had shoveled yesterday. Bill, 50 years old, marathon runner, always yapping about some detox cleanse. And now he shoveled Jack's walk like he was some helpless old man. The kettle whistled. Jack measured coffee into the filter, trying not to think about how it had been 3 weeks since his last Costco run. His phone buzzed. "Sarah, at 6 a.m. "Grandpa, are you looking outside?" Her voice was too bright for the hour. "Yep," he lied, his back to the window. "There's a blizzard coming. You're not driving to physical therapy today, right?" Jack glanced at the calendar where today's date was circled in red. Dr. Chen. 11:30, "I'll figure it out," he said. "Dad." The voice changed his daughter Laura now. "We agreed. Over 2 inches of snow and you don't drive. Bill will take you." "I'm not gonna, Dad. Please." That note in her voice always made him cave. The same one Mary used when she'd say, "Jack, you promised." "Fine," he surrendered. The call ended. Coffee ready, Jack sat at the kitchen table that once seated their whole family, now just holding bills, pill bottles, and a lonely newspaper. He grabbed the remote and turned the TV back on. School closures across El Paso County due to weather conditions, the anchor reported. Senior citizens are advised. Jack turned it off. Outside, the snow fell thicker. Somewhere in the garage sat his old Subaru that once hauled kids to ski meets and now barely started in the cold. He lifted his mug, but the coffee had gone lukewarm. And then he realized he couldn't wake up one more morning knowing today would hurt just as much. Jack pulled up his phone, found the number for that Arizona realtor who'd emailed him last week. His fingers shook as he typed, "Mr. Carter. About that Sedona house. I'm ready to talk." He hit send before he could second-guess it. Outside, the wind howled louder, snow now falling sideways. But for the first time in months, Jack felt something faintly like hope. He finished his cold coffee and reached for his cane. A long day ahead, and somewhere beyond the snow, the sun was waiting. Jack wasn't expecting an answer so soon. The phone rang just as he was struggling with a soup can, his fingers slipping on the lid, the knife skidding off, leaving scratches on the metal but no satisfying pop. "Hello? Mr. Peterson? Tom Carter from Sedona Living Realty. Got your message." The voice on the other end sounded like its owner was smiling. Jack pictured a sun-tanned man in a Hawaiian shirt, exactly how every realtor looked in those Florida commercials he sometimes caught on TV. "Yeah, that's me." "Great. So you're considering Sedona for relocation?" Jack glanced at his trembling hand, still gripping the knife. "I'm weighing my options." "Perfect. We just got this charming single-level home with a patio. No stairs, granite countertops, and the view of the red rocks? Absolutely breathtaking." Jack slowly sank into a kitchen chair. A faint ringing started in his ears, the kind that happened when he forgot his blood pressure meds. "How much?" $275, but we've got veteran programs that could. The numbers blurred. His Colorado home, according to the latest appraisal, was worth around $3. But after paying off the mortgage, fees... "Mr. Peterson, you still there?" "Yeah, just need to think it over." "Of course. I'll email you photos. Actually, we've got an open house tomorrow. If you could swing by..." Jack laughed, sharp, almost harsh. "You see the weather report? I can't even get out of my driveway today." A pause. Then Tom Carter chuckled too. Too loud, too forced. "Oh, right. Well, once it melts..." The call ended. Jack set the phone down and stared at the soup can. Suddenly, he wasn't hungry anymore. He walked to the window. Fresh snow had buried the walkway completely, a smooth white blanket hiding Bill's footprints. Somewhere beneath it lay the shovel his neighbor had left behind in his hurry. Jack picked up the phone again, dialed Laura, canceled, dialed Sarah, canceled again. Instead, he opened Google, slowly, pecking with one finger. Sedona, Arizona, average winter temps. The numbers taunted him. 60, 65 degrees, no snow, no ice. He clicked over to images, red rocks against blue sky, adobe-style houses, seniors in shorts and sandals. In January, Jack reached for the folder he'd started assembling a month ago, sneakily, at night, like he was doing something wrong. Bank statements, pension paperwork, home appraisal. He spread them across the table like a game of solitaire. The numbers didn't add up. Damn it! Somewhere deep in the house, a door creaked. Jack flinched. The old place loved startling him with noises like that. He went to the hall closet, where behind a box of Christmas decorations, untouched for 3 years, lay a U.S. map, unfolded it on the table, found Colorado Springs, traced his finger southwest, Arizona, Sedona. On paper, the distance seemed trivial, just a few inches. His phone buzzed. Sarah had sent a photo, her and his great-grandson in pom-pom hats. "Love you, Grandpa." Something tightened in Jack's chest. He turned the phone face down. Back to the map, Sedona was a tiny dot. No familiar towns nearby. No Denver, where Laura lived. No Albuquerque, where his grandson went to school. He folded the map, returned it to the closet, then picked up the phone, found Laura in contacts, and hit call. "Dad, everything okay?" "I'm thinking of moving," he said bluntly, no preamble. Silence, then a sigh. To Arizona? It's warm there. We're not there. Jack closed his eyes. I know. Dad, just wanted you to know, he interrupted. That's all. He hung up before she could respond. The kitchen clock ticked louder than usual. Jack walked to the fridge, where beneath a Disneyland magnet hung a photo. Him and Mary at the Grand Canyon, 1973. Her in a wide-brimmed hat, him sunburned from inexperience. We'll retire here someday, John, where even the rocks glow. He took the photo down, wiped dust off the frame. The phone rang again. Unknown number. Mr. Peterson? Martha Evans. I work with Tom Carter. You inquired about a Sedona property. Yeah, but just wanted to mention, we've got another listing, much cheaper. Needs some TLC, but Jack pressed the phone closer. How much? $190. And it has a pool. A pool. He imagined himself, an old man with arthritis, floating in warm water, pain-free. Send me the address. When the email arrived, he opened it with shaky fingers. The photos were grainy, taken on a phone. The house looked worn, but there was a patio and a table beneath a cactus where he could set his morning coffee. Jack switched tabs to flights. Denver to Flagstaff. Just $200. He clicked, book now, then opened his calendar. In 2 weeks, he had an appointment with Dr. Chen. Last one, he thought, setting a reminder. Outside, the snow had stopped. That peculiar stillness settled in, the kind only a heavy snowfall brings when the world holds its breath, mesmerized by its own whiteness. Jack returned to the window. Somewhere 1,000 miles away, sunshine was waiting. He pulled the suitcase from the closet, the same one he and Mary had taken to Vegas for their 20th anniversary. Dust billowed as he unzipped it. Inside lay a forgotten card. For the brave ones, read Mary's handwriting. Jack turned it over. Blank. He placed it on the nightstand beside her photo. Well, he whispered, guess I'm going to see those rocks after all. Outside, a dog barked. Baxter, his old lab, the one he still hadn't decided whether to bring. Jack reached for the leash. Come on, boy, let's take a walk. He opened the door, and cold air slapped his face. But for the first time in months, Jack felt it. Somewhere beneath the pain and doubt, something long forgotten flickered. Hope. The first thing Jack noticed when he stepped out of the Flagstaff airport was the absence of pain. Not that his knees had suddenly healed, but the bitter Colorado cold that used to dig into his joints like 1,000 little needles was gone. In its place, the dry, gentle warmth of Arizona air. He took a deep breath, bracing for the familiar tightness in his chest, but it didn't come. His lungs filled easily, like someone had loosened an invisible belt around his ribs. Mr. Peterson? A man in a cowboy hat and a shirt covered in cartoon cacti waved to him near the curb. Jack nodded and shifted the strap of his bag. Tom Carter. Welcome to Arizona. They shook hands. Tom's palm was rough, not from manual labor, but from too much sun. Jack recognized that kind of weathered skin. Not disappointed with the weather, huh? Tom grinned wide, his teeth too straight and white for a man his age. Jack glanced up at the sky. Endless, blue, not a cloud in sight. Not yet. Tom's truck had that new car smell, plastic and mint gum. Jack buckled in carefully, mindful of his knees around the dashboard. Sedona's just about an hour from here, Tom said, flipping on the AC. I'll show you a couple of spots along the way, places folks usually fall in love with. Jack nodded, watching the scenery roll by. The landscape was unfamiliar. Rust-colored hills, dry shrubs, rocks shaped like frozen waves. No pine trees, no snow. Everyone reacts like that the first time, Tom said, voice lowering. Feels like you landed on another planet. Jack gave a dry chuckle. Back on my planet, it's 10 degrees and snowing. Tom laughed, but Jack hadn't meant it as a joke. The road snaked through cliffs, climbing and dipping. Jack kept an eye on the speedometer, 65, 70, 75 miles per hour. Back in Colorado, he'd have gripped the door handle by now. But here, Tom drove like they were cruising across a still lake. There she is, Tom said, pointing ahead. The valley opened up suddenly. Red rock formations lit by the sunset like they were glowing from within. Jack stopped breathing for a moment. Mary, he whispered, forgetting Tom was sitting right next to him. Sorry. What was that? Nothing. Jack turned back toward the window, throat tight. The house was smaller than it looked in the pictures, and a little crooked. But the patio was real, and so was the table under the cactus, tall and spiny like a quiet sentry. Well? Tom rubbed his hands together. Jack walked the property slowly. The lawn was yellow and dry, but the pool, though murky, was still intact. He crouched down and ran his hand along the tile edge. It was warm to the touch, not like the cold concrete floor of his old garage. The sun does most of the work, Tom said. Come summer, the water's actually too warm. Jack pictured himself swimming there in December. No shivering, no aching muscles. Want to take a look inside? The house smelled like dust and shut-up windows. Jack stepped over the threshold. The floor creaked beneath him. Floors could use a little tightening, Tom said, tapping a board with his foot. And maybe a fresh coat of paint. Jack didn't answer. He walked over to the living room window. Beyond it, the red rocks had turned a deep crimson in the fading light. That's Cathedral Rock, Tom offered. Pretty famous around here. Jack nodded. He knew the name. Mary had bought a postcard with that view when they'd come here once, years ago. The kitchen was small, but the fridge looked brand new. The bathroom had no steps, just like the listing promised. The bedroom, just big enough for his bed and the nightstand with Mary's photo. Well, Mr. Peterson? Jack sighed. How many showings so far? 185, Tom said. That includes you. Price is down because of the cosmetic stuff. Jack pulled out his phone, double-checked his numbers. Pension, house sale, savings. I'll think about it. Of course, Tom clapped him on the shoulder. I can leave you here for a bit, give you some space. Let the place speak to you. Jack nodded. Once Tom drove off, Jack stepped out onto the patio. The quiet here was different, not the muffled kind that comes after a snowfall, but alive, rustling leaves, the chirp of bugs he couldn't name. He sat at the table and pulled out his phone. One message from Laura. How is it? Jack took a photo of the rocks and sent it. Warm. Her reply came almost immediately. Looks beautiful. Have you decided? Jack placed the phone face down on the table. He closed his eyes and imagined life here, waking up without stiff shoulders, morning coffee on this patio, maybe even a new dog. He'd left Baxter with Laura, not wanting to drag an old dog into the unknown. But when he opened his eyes, the rocks weren't glowing anymore. They'd gone dark, almost black against the deep blue sky. And suddenly he felt a flicker of fear. What if the sun was all this place had to offer? What if warmth was just a cover for something hollow? He reached into his pocket and unfolded a printout, a list of nearby clinics that took Medicare. Sedona had 3. Colorado Springs, 12. His phone buzzed. Tom again. Everything okay? Want me to swing back? Jack looked at the house. The paint near the front door was peeling, curling into the shape of some unfamiliar map. Yeah, he texted back. When Tom returned, Jack was by the pool, tossing small pebbles into the murky water. So, Mr. Peterson? Jack turned. I'll take it. Tom's whole face lit up. Excellent choice. but on one condition. What's that? Jack pointed at the pool. I want to see that clean before I sign anything. Tom laughed. You got it. On the drive to the motel, Jack didn't say much. Tom went on about paperwork, title transfers, closing costs, but Jack barely heard a word. His mind was already elsewhere. The call he'd have to make to his real estate agent back in Colorado, the packing, how he'd explain to Baxter that snow wasn't going to be part of their lives anymore. The motel was small, with a view of the mountains. The room smelled like bleach and something lemony. Jack dropped his bag on the bed and sat by the window. The phone rang. Laura. Dad, where are you? At the motel in Sedona. And? Jack looked down at his hands, already a shade darker after just one day here. I bought the house. A pause, then a breath. Congratulations. Does Sarah know? Not yet. Jack touched the windowsill. It was sticky from the heat. You coming out before the move? Of course. He wanted to say more, but the words didn't come. Dad, are you sure? Jack closed his eyes. No. Another pause. But I'm doing it anyway, he said. After the call, he reached into his bag and pulled out the small framed photo of Mary, the travel-size one from his nightstand. He set it next to the lamp. Well, he whispered, we made it. Outside, the desert night had come alive with scattered lights, not like in the city. Jack imagined the two of them sitting on the patio, a glass of wine, stars overhead. But Mary was gone, and the stars here were different, brighter, but strange. He lay down on the bed, the day's weight pulling him toward sleep. Tomorrow, one more house viewing, just to be sure, a meeting with the agent, a call to the bank. But before turning off the light, he checked the weather back in Colorado Springs. 12 below, snowstorm. Jack turned off the screen and rolled onto his side. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of the next morning. But for some reason, it didn't feel like peace. The first rays of sun cut through the blinds, painting golden stripes on the motel wall. Jack opened his eyes and waited, bracing for the usual stiffness. But his shoulders moved easily, his fingers unclenched without resistance. He raised a hand to his face. No tremor, no tingling. Only warm light dancing on wrinkled skin. The shower was cramped, but the water was hot and didn't smell like sulfur, unlike the old house. Jack stood under the stream, letting it knead his back, thinking, today he'd sign the papers. In 2 weeks, the house would be his. In a month, he'd move in. And in 2, he'd wake up no longer in Colorado. The phone rang while he was tying his shoes. Unknown number. Mr. Peterson? This is Dr. Evans from Red Rock Clinic. You scheduled a consultation? The voice was young, too chipper for 7 a.m. Jack held the phone with his shoulder, finishing the knot. Yeah, I thought that was later. We had a cancellation for 11 today. Perfect timing before your meeting with the agent, right? Jack frowned. How do you know about... Tom Carter told us. He said you were concerned about your medical records transfer. That Arizona friendliness was starting to feel like intrusion. All right, 11. Red Rock Clinic turned out to be a single-story ranch-style building with cacti at the entrance. Inside smelled of antiseptic and something sweet, not medicine, more like a scented candle. Jack was filling out forms when the door opened and a woman with a cane walked in. Oh, a newcomer, she grinned, white teeth against dark skin. I'm Martha. Jack nodded. Jack. Where from, Jack? Colorado. Martha eased herself down into a chair with effort. Uh-huh. Snow escapee. I'm from Minnesota. Been here 3 years. How is it? She smirked. Joints are happy, soul not always. They called Jack in before he could respond. Dr. Evans' office was lined with diplomas and photos of red rock formations. He was around 40, graying at the temples, calm eyes. "So, Mr. Peterson," he said, scrolling through a file, "arthritis, old shoulder trauma, early cataracts. You got my records from Colorado?" "Partially." Evans removed his glasses. "But let's start with an exam." It took 40 minutes. Evans was thorough, asking about pain, habits. When he asked Jack to remove his shirt, his gaze lingered on the scar just under the collarbone. "Vietnam?" Jack nodded. "Mechanic. My dad served there." Evans pressed on the shoulder. Jack gritted his teeth. "When's the last time this was checked?" "Last year. There's a great orthopedist in a nearby town. I'll refer you." When it was over, Evans leaned back. "Good news. The climate will help. Bad news. Medicare here doesn't cover everything it did in Colorado." A cold knot formed in Jack's stomach. "Like what?" "Your monthly injections. Here, they're out of pocket." "How much?" Evans named the amount. Jack did the math. Nearly a third of his pension. "Alternatives? Cheaper pills? Less effective?" Jack stared out the window, palm leaves swaying. "I'll think about it." "Of course," Evans said, standing. "Shall we book a follow-up in a month?" In the parking lot, Jack sat in the car and checked his bank app. The house sale would cover the new one, but his savings would be thinner than expected. Tom was waiting at the property with a smile and a folder. The pool had been cleaned, water glinted turquoise. "Well, Mr. Peterson, ready to become an Arizonan?" Jack took the pen silently. The signing took 20 minutes. Tom chatted about trash pickup days, neighbors, the best grocery store. Jack nodded, signing where he was told. At the final page, Tom handed him the keys. "Congratulations, it's yours." The keys were warm from the sun. "Thanks. Feel like celebrating? There's a great bar in town." "Not today." Back at the motel, Jack lay on the bed and closed his eyes. Now he had a house in Arizona, and a longer list of problems than he'd counted on. The phone rang again. This time, it was Sarah. "Dad, did you really buy that house?" "Yeah." "Without an inspection? Without—" "I looked it over." Silence, then a sigh. "Okay, when do you move?" 3 weeks. "You coming by first?" Jack looked at Mary's photo. "Yeah, I need to grab a few things from the old place." "Baxter misses you." A twinge of guilt. "I know." After the call, he went for a walk. The streets of Sedona were nearly empty. Tourist season hadn't kicked in. He found a cafe called Red Rock Coffee, ordered a black coffee, sat by the window. "New here?" the barista asked, pink-haired, placing the mug in front of him. Jack nodded. "From Colorado." "Oh, half the country's fleeing cold these days." She smiled. "I'm from Illinois." "How long?" 5 years. "No regrets?" She paused. "Sometimes I miss the rain. The real kind, you know. Here, it's like the sky sneezes." Jack smirked. The coffee was strong, slightly bitter. "Where'd you settle?" "Bought a place near the cliffs." "Nice. Sunsets are amazing there." Jack looked out. The sun blazed straight overhead, flooding the street with white light. "Yeah." He walked back to the motel, but detoured into a small park. Empty benches, a few sparrows fussing in the dust. Jack sat, took out his phone. He looked up the local veterans club, dialed, hung up after the first ring. Dinner was at a highway diner. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, iced tea. A family sat nearby, 2 kids, parents. A boy about 7 peeked at him, then hid behind his hands. Jack smiled, thinking of his grandson. "You a tourist?" asked the waitress, an older woman with deep smile lines. "Moving here." "Ah." A lot of folks do. Think they found paradise. Isn't it? She chuckled. Paradise is where you're loved. Here, it's just warm. Jack paid and stepped into the cooling night. The stars were indeed brighter here. Back in the room, he checked Colorado's forecast. 28 degrees, cloudy. He set the phone down, picked up Mary's photo. What do you think? He whispered. On the table lay the new house keys, Dr. Evans' receipt, a brochure on local senior services. Jack lay down but couldn't sleep. He got up, stood by the window. Somewhere in the dark, a dog barked. He pulled a notebook from his bag and began to write. Detective Michelson knew a change of scenery wouldn't fix things, but maybe it could change the set dressing. The pen scratched softly. A bat flitted past the window, a black blur against stars. Jack kept writing until his fingers began to ache. Then he set the notebook down and turned off the light. Tomorrow was the flight back to Colorado, the beginning of the end. And yet, closing his eyes, he didn't see Red Rock. He saw the snow-covered porch of his house and Baxter waiting at the door. The plane touched down in Denver under a light drizzle. Jack pressed his palm to the window, watching the raindrops stretch into long, wet trails. Colorado greeted him with exactly the weather he'd run from. Gray skies, a damp chill that seeped through the glass of the terminal. He reached for the cane tucked into the seat pocket in front of him and immediately felt the familiar pull in his shoulder. 6 days in Arizona had nearly made him forget what it was like to move through pain. The cab driver, a chatty Mexican with graying mustache, spotted his limp right away. "I'll drop you right at the door, senor." Jack wanted to wave it off, but the rain was getting heavier. He nodded. The cab smelled of pine-scented air freshener and something damp, like someone had left wet clothes in the back seat too long. The house met him with silence. Baxter, who used to greet him at the door with excited barking, now lay on his dog bed by the fireplace, lazily thumping his tail. Jack knelt beside him, scratching behind one ear. "Missed me, old man?" Baxter licked his hand but didn't get up. The vet had said 13 was a respectable age for a lab. Jack unpacked, hung his blazer over the kitchen chair. Mary's chair, the one where she always draped her knitted shawl. It had vanished a year ago when Sarah helped him box up things, but sometimes his hand still reached out, expecting the feel of soft wool. His phone buzzed in his pocket. "Sarah, you made it?" "Yeah, all good." "Dad, I want to talk. Can you come by tomorrow?" Her voice had the same cautious edge it had 2 weeks ago when she'd first suggested he move in with them. Jack sighed. "I've got things to pack. Need to arrange the movers. It's important." He glanced at Baxter, who had slowly risen and wandered to his water bowl. "All right, I'll be there by lunch." The night passed in fragments. Jack tossed and turned, kicking off the blanket, then pulling it back. At 3 a.m., he got up, poured a glass of water, stood at the window. The rain had stopped, but puddles shimmered on the driveway under the street lamp. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, ambulance or cops, racing toward someone's midnight trouble. He pulled a photo album from the shelf. Their wedding, 1976. Mary in a lace-sleeved dress, him in a ridiculous brown suit that had been fashionable at the time. "We looked like kids," he whispered, running a finger over the faded image. By morning, as the coffee brewed, Jack walked through the house, noting what needed to be packed, what to leave behind. The kitchen cabinets were full of things he hadn't touched in years. A juicer from his 40th birthday, a set of glassware that had survived 3 moves. In the garage, he found a box of old radios waiting to be fixed. "I'll never finish these," he muttered, brushing dust off a 1978 Philips transistor. The drive to Sarah's took 40 minutes. Her home, a two-story butter-colored house with a bike on the lawn and a basketball hoop over the garage, looked lived in. As he stepped out of the car, his grandkids, 7-year-old Ethan and 5-year-old Lisa, ran to him. "Grandpa, did you bring us something from Arizona?" "Just some sand in my shoes," he joked, letting Lisa steal his hat. Sarah waited in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. "Soup," she said, though he hadn't asked. Her hair was down for once, framing her face in a way that made her look younger, more like Mary. "So, what did you want to talk about?" Jack sat down, nudging a coloring book aside. She set the spoon down and turned to him. "Greg and I were thinking, maybe you could stay." His chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "We finished the basement. It's got a bathroom, a little kitchen. I bought a house, Sarah. But you saw the problems, the injections. The doctor said, 'I'll handle it.'" She slapped the table with her palm. "Why do you always have to be so stubborn? Mom would have—" "Don't speak for your mother." Silence hung between them, thick and brittle. Upstairs, the kids laughed. Ethan must have shown Lisa a new trick. Sarah wiped her hands on her apron. "I'm sorry. I just worry." Jack looked out the window. Lisa was trying to climb onto the swing set. "I know." He stayed for lunch, played with the kids, even laughed when Ethan landed in a puddle trying to mimic a movie stunt. But when Sarah brought up moving again, Jack pushed back from the table. "I should go. Baxter hasn't eaten yet." On the way home, he stopped at a shopping center, bought dog food, and a bottle of whiskey. His first in 10 years. At the checkout, the pierced girl barely glanced at him. The house was quiet. Baxter didn't come to the door. Jack found him curled on the bedroom rug. "Hey, old man," he called softly. The dog only gave a slow wag. He sat on the floor, stroked the lab's fur. Beneath his fingers, he could feel bones that hadn't been that prominent before. "Did you eat today?" The dog gave a sigh, almost like an answer. Jack picked up his phone, found the vet's number, closed his eyes. In Arizona, he would have had to find a new doctor, for both of them. He placed the whiskey bottle on a shelf, unopened. Instead, he pulled out his toolbox and finally fixed the living room door that had creaked for years. That evening, Baxter nibbled at some soaked kibble. Jack stepped onto the porch. The air smelled of rain and pine. Somewhere beyond the hill, a dog barked. Probably the neighbor's collie, chasing squirrels again. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the key to the Sedona house, a heavy one with a cactus-shaped red keychain. He turned it in his hand, then slipped it back into his pocket. The phone rang inside. Jack rose slowly, his knees protesting. The screen showed an unfamiliar number with an Arizona area code. He lifted the phone. "Hello? Mr. Peterson? Tom Carter here, about the house paperwork." Jack looked at Baxter, who'd made it to the living room and now rested his head on Jack's knee. "Mr. Peterson, can you hear me?" Outside, the rain had started again. Soft drops drummed against the roof like a memory. "Mr. Peterson?" Jack took a slow breath. "I hear you." He stroked Baxter's head, feeling the warmth of living fur. Somewhere in the house, the retirement gift clock ticked steadily. On the wall hung a calendar with photos of Colorado. The image for this month was a mountain lake where he and Mary used to fish. "I've changed my mind," he said. Silence on the line. Even the rain seemed to pause. "You want to cancel the deal?" Jack closed his eyes. He pictured Sedona's red cliffs, the sun on his face, the patio of a house where no one knew his name. Then opened them and saw Baxter, watching him with steady brown eyes. "Yes," he said. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. But not over this house.